Picture an immense, sprawling ancient world. We're talking disconnected empires, massive sweeping deserts, and totally impenetrable mountain ranges. Now, imagine a single young visionary looking out at that incredibly fractured map and deciding he was going to unite the whole thing under one banner. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tracing the breathtaking journey of a guy whose name isn't just written in the pages of history, but literally carved into them with blood, sweat, and boundless ambition.
He achieved in 32 years what many could not dream of in 1,000. That quote right there perfectly captures the sheer scale of his life. We're looking at a king, a philosopher, and a warrior whose footsteps echoed all the way from the rocky shores of Greece to the deep, rain-soaked jungles of India. In just over 3 decades, he conquered half the known world. But, who was the actual man behind the myth? How exactly does a young prince dream of conquering the world and then actually almost pull the whole shebang off?
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. Birth of a legend. 2. Taking the throne. 3. Conquering the Persian Empire. 4. Culture and the East. 5. The Indian frontier. And 6. Death and immortal legacy. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. Birth of a legend. Let's set the scene.
It's the ancient city of Pella, 356 BC. This is the capital of Macedonia, and it's a place completely swirling with political power, intense religious fervor, and the constant heavy scent of impending war. Alexander was forged by 2 completely opposite forces. From his father, King Philip II, who was a strict armored warrior and brilliant tactician, he learned the brutal art of war and statesmanship. But from his mother, Queen Olympias, who was absolutely draped in mysticism and ambition, well, he was told a very different story. She convinced Alexander from a super young age that he was no ordinary boy. She told him he was a demigod, a literal descendant of the gods, born for ultimate greatness.
So as you can imagine, this unique upbringing shaped a wildly ambitious mind. Get this, at just 12 years old, while most kids are just trying to figure out their basic chores, he actually tames Bucephalus. This was a massive, wild horse that no grown man could break. Recognizing this incredibly raw potential, Philip goes ahead and hires none other than Aristotle in 343 BC to tutor the boy. Aristotle, one of the greatest minds of the ancient world, completely transforms this fierce young warrior into a profound philosopher king. Alexander studies logic, science, and medicine. He obsessively reads Homer's Iliad, idolizes the mythical warrior Achilles, and develops this unbreakable dream to one day unite the cultures of the East and the West.
Section 2. Taking the throne.
The time for study ends incredibly abruptly. In a dark, shadowy turn of events in 336 BC, King Philip is suddenly and brutally assassinated by one of his own bodyguards. Thrust onto a highly unstable throne at just 20 years old, Alexander is instantly surrounded by enemies. Greek city-states immediately saw their chance to rebel. But Alexander, he moved with terrifying speed. In 336 BC, he secures his throne by rapidly eliminating rivals. Then, by 335 BC, he makes a chilling example of the rebelling city of Thebes. He utterly destroys the city and enslaves the survivors. It was a brutal, deeply calculated move that proved to all of Greece, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that he was not some weak, grieving boy. He was an iron-willed ruler, every bit as dangerous as his father.
Section 3. Conquering the Persian Empire.
With Greece firmly under his boot, he looks across the Aegean Sea to the dusty plains of Asia Minor. He crosses over to fulfill his father's ultimate dream, taking down the Persian Empire. And he does it with just 40,000 men. That is a relatively tiny force of infantry and cavalry to bring with you in 334 BC, especially when you're marching directly into the teeth of Emperor Darius III's Persian juggernaut, an army of millions stretching all the way from Egypt to India. Alexander is vastly outnumbered, for sure, but he brings things the Persians simply didn't expect. Unmatched speed, deep, unbreakable loyalty from troops who fought right beside him on the front lines, and masterful psychological warfare.
This all comes to a head at the legendary Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BC. Here, Alexander proved he was an absolute master of battlefield geometry. Darius brought elephants, chariots, and a massive army to a flat plain totally built for Persian success. But Alexander just flipped the script. Step 1, he deliberately shifts his forces to the right, dragging the Persian flank with him and stretching their massive line. Step 2, the exact moment a gap opens up in their formation, he strikes. Step 3, he personally leads a surgical cavalry charge directly into that gap, aiming straight at Emperor Darius himself. Darius panics, he flees the battlefield, and just like that, the mighty Persian Empire completely collapses.
You have to understand, Alexander was a man of startling extremes. On one hand, he was the ruthless conqueror watching the magnificent pillars of the Persian capital, Persepolis, burn to the absolute ground after looting its immense wealth. Yet, on the other hand, he was also the honorable leader who, upon finally finding his murdered rival Darius, literally knelt in the dirt, covered him with his own cloak, and wept. He made sure to give the fallen emperor a full, honorable royal burial. He was just a super complex figure, capable of great terror, but also profound respect.
Section 4. Culture and the East. Let's head to Egypt.
Leaving the blood-soaked battlefields behind for the majestic dunes of Egypt, our conqueror experiences a totally different kind of reception. When Alexander enters Egypt, he isn't welcomed as an enemy, but actually as a savior from Persian oppression. He shows deep, genuine respect for the local cultures and religions. He's declared pharaoh, and out at the Siwa oasis, oracle priests proclaim him the son of Amun, which perfectly validated all his mother's childhood whispers about him being divine. But honestly, his greatest act here was laying the foundation for Alexandria, right by the Mediterranean Sea. He envisioned this place not just as another city, but as the ultimate beacon of global knowledge and harmony, a real attempt to fuse Greek and Egyptian civilizations.
Section 5. The Indian Frontier.
The edge of the map just kept calling to him, you know? By 327 BC, Alexander pushes his incredibly weary army eastward into the absolute unknown, crossing right into the rain-soaked, densely forested, and super treacherous landscapes of the Indian subcontinent. This brings us to the grueling Battle of the Hydaspes in 326 BC. It was fought in a relentless monsoon against King Porus, who fielded a terrifying literal wall of war elephants. It was an absolute bloodbath, but Alexander's tactical genius won out yet again. When the defeated, wounded, but incredibly proud Porus was brought before him, Alexander asked how he wished to be treated. Porus looked him dead in the eye and delivered this legendary line, "Treat me like a king." Alexander was so deeply moved by his dignity and courage that he not only restored Porus's kingdom, he actually expanded it for him.
However, nature and human limits eventually achieve what no enemy army ever could. Relentless monsoon rains, tropical diseases, and terrifying rumors of even more massive empires lying ahead finally snap his army's morale. At the Bias River, his fiercely loyal soldiers just mutiny. They flat out refuse to take another step east. Completely heartbroken, Alexander is forced to turn back. And the retreat? It's catastrophic. He marches a huge portion of his forces through the unforgiving Makron Desert. It's a journey of searing heat and zero water, resulting in a horrific death toll. It's actually said he lost more men to that desert than he ever did in any battle.
Section 6. Death and Immortal Legacy. Battered, exhausted, but somehow still dreaming of fresh conquests in Arabia and Africa, the young king returns to Babylon in 323 BC, but his body finally fails him. In June 323 BC, after a sudden onset of fever and agonizing pain, Alexander collapses. The historical mystery surrounding his final days still linger today. Was it malaria, typhoid, maybe acute pancreatitis from his heavy drinking? Or was it deliberate poisoning by his exhausted generals? Honestly, we may never know for sure. What we do know is that as he lay dying at just 32 years old, he was asked who should inherit this impossibly vast empire. His chilling final decree was simply, "To the strongest."
That one single sentence unleashed absolute chaos. The physical empire, basically like a shattered crown, violently fractured instantly into the hands of his generals, who were known as the Diadochi. As you can see, Ptolemy seized Egypt, Seleucus took Persia and Syria, and Antigonus claimed Asia Minor. The physical empire was totally shattered into warring Hellenistic kingdoms. But here's the thing, while his empire died, his vision absolutely did not. His conquests birthed the Hellenistic civilization, leaving cultural and intellectual shockwaves that still impact us right now. Eastern and Western cultures beautifully collided. We see this in the intellectual powerhouse of the Great Library of Alexandria, and in Gandhara art, which blended Greek aesthetics with Buddhist imagery over in India. And his military doctrines, they literally wrote the textbook for future leaders like Julius Caesar and Napoleon Bonaparte. Alexander wanted to be a god, to push beyond the very edges of the earth. So we have to ask, did his limitless ambition ultimately destroy him? It's a pretty powerful reminder of the fleeting nature of physical power versus the immortal endurance of ideas, culture, and legends. So what do you think? Did his ambition elevate humanity, or does it serve as a tragic warning? Take that question with you. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning history.